Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathleen and I'm mother to Jack. Jack is almost 4 and has Prader-Willi syndrome. Something that the majority of the people in this room and I have in common. I would usually say that this was unfortunate that we shared this. However, I'm grateful for these mothers and fathers alike because without them, who know where Jack would be in his journey today. For us, this journey started over 4 years ago with a standard pregnancy and ongoing below average scans. Some would say a mother's intuition, but things just didn't quite seem right, despite our obstetrician saying everything's okay. Months later, skipping ahead to a routine caesarean, Jack was born healthy with strong APGAR scores of 8 and 8. Despite this, however, he had a weak cry, floppy presentation, and was rushed to the nursery to warm up. Whilst Jack was in the nursery, my mother had come up to the hospital with our eldest son, Harry, to meet his brother before the hospital closed its doors for the very first COVID lockdown. A few hours later, the head of midwifery returned Jack to us without any concern, and we finally were all able to say hello to our newest little boy. So, after 2 to 3 hours since birth, Jack still had not had anything to drink. I remember when Harry was born, he was starving. That's just boys, I guess. But Jack showed no interest. So we then thought we'd try the colostrum that we had in the fridge, but still nothing. So we moved on to the next task and I handed him to my mother to get him dressed. My mother, a retired nurse, did as I asked and handed him back to me to try feeding him again. Again, Jack was not interested, and it was then that for the first time I thought that something wasn't quite right. "Mum, do you think something's wrong?" I said. She said, "Yes, you need to get the paediatrician back here as soon as possible." Sorry. She knew something was wrong and wondered why no one had taken any notice. Sorry, excuse me. Days later, after insisting for the on-call paediatrician to start doing tests, thank you, honey. We were sent to the Mater from Toowoomba and received our diagnosis one very long week later. The information received the day that we got that diagnosis was outstanding. Sorry. I knew I was going to cry. Our paediatrician at the time had enrolled the help of his colleague, our geneticist, to help break the news and answer any of our questions because he just was not familiar with the syndrome. I'll never forget what they told us that day, how Jack was essentially going to eat himself to death and most likely die at an early age from obesity or diabetes. But this mindset has continued throughout Jack's short little life. Our GPs, specialists, daycares, teachers, all asking, "How's his food take? Do you have to lock your cupboards?" And whilst hyperphagia is a huge and terrifying part of Prader-Willi, it is much more complex than this, much more complex than eating rubbish and locking our cupboards. There are behavioural issues, developmental delays, constant respiratory issues. In addition, they have high pain thresholds, low muscle tone, mental illness, including anxiety and psychosis, and a high threshold to vomiting. Each of these things make it much more difficult for GPs, paediatricians alike to diagnose illness and infection without the thorough knowledge of these quirks that Prader-Willi brings to the table. But we didn't know this at the time. For my husband and I to find all of this information involved hours, days, weeks of scrolling through websites while we were wondering how we were going to cope. Wondering how this was going to affect Harry, our eldest son. So there we went down the very long rabbit hole of Google and uninformative websites, and that was when I came across a Facebook page that changed everything for us. The Prader-Willi support for Aussies. This changed everything. From here, the clever mothers and fathers that had been through all of this before shared their knowledge and pointed us in the right direction. These are things that our paediatrician just did not have the knowledge to tell us. They didn't know to say, get Jack onto growth hormone as soon as you can, or get your team of allied health together as soon as you can, or reach out to this group or website for more information. They just did not have the experience or knowledge to help us act quickly. I suppose this could be faulted to the lack of published information in Australia. Compared to other countries, we simply do not have the studies and research projects as other countries such as America and New Zealand, just to name a few. Why? Because Australia is... Simply because we just don't have the funding allocated towards Prader-Willi research. The creation of the Centre of Expertise will create a one-stop shop, if you like, by giving care coordination for providers and families, helping to prevent these delays in treatment. Well, as we experience, I know it's not the same for everyone. It's a huge step forward to make a positive impact on the lives affected by Prader-Willi syndrome, reducing the grief and impact felt by families in previous years. Families feel hope instead of despair, knowing that they can make their children's future bright with expert medical information, which means children can have their NG tube removed sooner, hold their head up by themselves, sit, crawl, walk, and maybe speak alongside their peers. We could see cost-saving measures for doctors gaining instant access to up-to-date information, diagnosing illness earlier and preventing secondary illness. For regional patients, this could prevent long trips and costly overnight stays in the cities because their local GPs and paediatrician know what they're talking about, rather than referring their patients on to other specialists. Jack was almost 6 months old by the time he started on growth hormone. That's just how long it took for us to get everything in place. Things such as a diagnosis letter, the sleep studies, tummy measurements, finding an endocrinologist, and not just any endocrinologist, one that knows about Prader-Willi and the PBS procedures. Jack should have been able to start his intervention as soon as possible, and I will always wonder how this would have changed his and our experiences of his diagnosis. Thank you.